I was a child, only 17 years old.
Peace, peace. What's up, Black people? Welcome to Yemima's World. I am your hostess, Yemima. Saturday afternoon, and I am Black at it again. Just wanted to come with a quick history lesson. This segment is called Ida B. Wails. And what is Miss Ida B. wailing at today? Well, she is wailing today at something that happened a long time ago in the early 1900s, the turn of the 20th century. This horrible thing happened. So the picture that you see on my screen is of a woman named Virginia Christian. Well, I take that back. It's of a child named Virginia Christian. Virginia Christian was born on August 15th in 1895 in Hampton, Virginia. 1895. So what, 30 years right out of slavery. So she's born into a time where slavery still exists. It may not exist on paper, but it definitely exists in the lives of our ancestors. She lived with her mom and her father, and I believe she had a couple of siblings. She was a maid for a white woman named Ida Belote, and she worked for her several days a week. She did, of course, the cooking, the cleaning, the washing, and all of those things that a maid does. Now, again, we are out of slavery. This is in 1912. So we're still only about, 35, 40 years out of slavery, that we are still being oppressed as a people. She's an illiterate young girl. She never attended school, so she doesn't know how to read and write. She basically is enslaved, if you will. Now, her she was an employer, so she had the employee-employer relationship with Ida Belote. She was being paid for her services, but it still doesn't mean that she was being paid what she was worth. It still doesn't mean that she wasn't being oppressed. People think that because we are paid doesn't make us oppressed. I get so sick and tired of hearing white people say, well, you're making money now, so you're not oppressed. Bullshit. We are still oppressed in a lot of ways. So I have my balcony window open if you hear the traffic on the streets. But let's keep getting into Miss Virginia Christian's story. So she worked for Ida Belote. Again, she was illiterate. She couldn't read or write. And at some point, Ida Belote accused her of stealing a bracelet from her. She had no proof other than she couldn't find the bracelet. And of course, well, if she can't find it, then the Black girl had to have stolen it. So when she accused her, they got into a verbal altercation. And of course, it escalated to a physical one, to the point where Ida Belote picked up a broom handle and began to beat Virginia with it. And I don't believe that was the first time that she had beaten her. According to testimony from Virginia, she had beaten her before. So this wasn't the first time. But this time, Virginia fought back. And she blocked her blows from the broomstick, and she pushed Ida Belote, and Ida fell back, and she started screaming. Well, Virginia knew that a white woman screaming was going to be the death of her. And so she took a towel and she shoved it in her mouth to quiet her screams. Unfortunately, it quieted her for good because she suffocated her, and Ida Belote died. Virginia ran. She didn't tell anyone. She just ran. Witnesses say they saw her running from the house, didn't know why she was running. They just, hadn't found Ida Belote, so they didn't know. Like she had been murdered. Of course, they started looking for Virginia Christian. She went home and she told her mother and father what had happened, and her father hid her. Of course, it's his daughter. He hid her. The police came, and of course, he had to relinquish his daughter to the police. Once that happened, Virginia Christian's mother, they lived in Hampton, Virginia. She went to Thomas Newsom's house and asked him if he would be her daughter's attorney. Thomas Newsom is one of the first Black attorneys in the Virginia area, in the Hampton Roads area. His house, his museum still stands here. You can come to the Hampton Roads area and visit the Thomas Newsome house. And so Virginia Christian's mother asked him if he would be her attorney. At that time, he had a partner. His partner was George Washington Fields. And if you know who I am, then you know that I have told the George Washington Fields family story for many, many years. And he and Thomas Newsome were her attorneys. Now, because they were Black, there wasn't too much that they could do in her defense, not because she was guilty, but because they were Black. So number one, they couldn't question any white people. And all of the people who claimed they saw her running, some people claim they saw her with a bracelet, that she sold it and used the money to buy candy and soda and gum or whatever. But all of the witnesses who claimed that they saw Virginia were white. And anybody else that would have been a character witness for her were Black, and they were able to question them, but they didn't really take the testimony of Black people seriously. So they couldn't really be a character witness for another Black person. They would have needed a white person to be a character witness, and there were none to be found. So they arrested her. Again, she was illiterate. She could not read. She could not write. And of course, they coerced a confession out of her. And the prosecuting attorney wrote down her confession as she recited it from the book. There's a book that is out, and I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called Forsaken. It's called Forsaken. And from the book, she prayed. She asked Jesus to forgive her for what she had done. Basically, confess to murder, not to self-defense, but to murder. So the trial lasted for about a month. They had moved her from Hampton down to Richmond, Virginia, to the city jail of Spring Street. And if you are from Virginia and you know Richmond, then you know about Spring Street jail. Unfortunately, if you are from Richmond and you are African American, then 9 out of 10 of us, unfortunately, know someone who spent some time at Spring Street jail. It's a well-known city jail. It really is. So the trial went on about a month and a half, and at the end, they found her guilty. There were mobs outside of the Spring Street jail at times asking them to release her so that they could lynch her. They were ready to lynch her even before the trial began. So they had to protect her long enough for the state to lynch her. So once they found her guilty, they sentenced her to be executed. Her mother wrote a letter to the governor of the state of Virginia at that time, and she begged for her daughter's life. She said, I understand what she did was wrong, and yes, she needs to pay the price, but she is a child. She was 16 years old at the time. She said she is a child, and I understand that she has to pay, and if you have to leave her in prison for the rest of her life, then do so, but please do not kill my child. And the governor responded with his deepest sympathy and understood how Miss Christian would feel about her daughter being executed. But please, Miss Christian, understand that the Balote family is also in mourning for Balote, and we have to make sure that they are comforted. And I do understand, but the execution will go forth. That's just how I thought he sounded. I don't know. And so they set the execution date. And again, she's 16 years old. And she felt like she had been abandoned by everyone. There was nothing else her mother and father could do for her. Something she could do for herself. If you look at the picture on the screen of Virginia Christian, that's a picture they took of her when they arrested her. And you could look in her eyes and see the remorse in her eyes, and also see someone who had been abused Now, I can't answer, and I don't know why her mother and father, if they knew she was being abused by Ida Belote, why they would continue to send her. But again, please understand that after 290 some odd years of whitewashing, of brainwashing, of oppression, of chattel slavery, that is kind of what we knew white people to be: abusive, oppressive, and yet we would still send our children into those spaces. And to be honest with you, it's really no different than in the 21st century, over 400 years out of the beginning of slavery, 100 and some years out of slavery, almost 200 years out of slavery. And we still send our children into abusive, oppressive, white spaces, i.e., school, knowing they're being abused. And yet we send them every day. And so I can't put blame on her mother and father, because the whitewashing and the brainwashing is real even to this day. But it's all right. Virginia Christian, we salute you today. We have not forgotten you. I hope we can learn from what you went through. As 21st century people, Black people, I hope we stop sending our children into spaces where they're being oppressed, where they have to fight for their lives, and where they have to end up in jail for protecting themselves from an abusive situation that we as parents have allowed them to be in. That's Virginia Christian's story. She was executed on August 16th. She was executed on August 16th, 1912. One day after her 17th birthday. So yes, she was still a child. We won't forget you, Virginia Christian. Till next time, people, look, love each other, love yourself, give people grace, give yourself some grace, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay unapologetically Black. Until next time, peace.